Today I'm going to talk about The Division Bell by Pink Floyd. I will be telling the story of how this album came to be. I will talk about the recording process, the lyrical themes of the songs, the album art, release, promotion, and tour. Then I'll go through the songs and give my final thoughts on the album. First, I'll give you some background on the album. This is their 14th studio album. It was released on March 28th in the UK and April 4th in the US. This is the second Pink Floyd album without Roger Waters, the first being A Momentary Lapse of Reason. This can also be considered the last proper studio album by the band, as the next one, The Endless River, was mostly all instrumental and comprised leftover tracks from the Division Bell sessions. Songs were mostly written by David Gilmour and Richard Wright. The band was also rounded out by Nick Mason, making this an album with 3 members of the band in addition to guest musicians. The album also has Richard Wright doing lead vocals for the first time since Dark Side of the Moon. Most of the lyrics deal with themes of communication. They were written by David Gilmour's fiancée, Samson. This was also the last album with Richard Wright, who died in 2008. The recording process started in January 1993. The band started to practice new material at Britannia Studios. They had Guy Pratt playing bass guitar, who was on their Momentary Lapse of Reason tour. The recording process went smoothly, or should I say better than the last time for A Momentary Lapse of Reason when they had some legal problems. I did a video on that and I will link it to the end. After about 2 weeks, they had enough material for the second phase of the recording process. They went to the Astoria, which is a houseboat owned by David Gilmour that has a built-in recording studio. They were joined by engineer Andy Jackson and co-producer Bob Ezrin. They eventually eliminated and combined all these recorded tracks, and they came up with 11 proper songs. The recording process was not all smooth sailing, though. Richard Wright was still feeling resentment from the band as he was not a full member of the band anymore. He resigned in the 70s due to pressure from Roger Waters. But on a positive note, he got his first songwriting credit since Wish You Were Here from 1970. If you remember, I mentioned that many of the songs were written by Gilmour's fiancée, Samson. At first, she was only meant to be there as encouragement for David Gilmour, but then she helped him write High Hopes, a song about Gilmour's childhood in Cambridge. But afterwards, she ended up writing 6 more songs, and this was an issue for Bob Ezrin, but he eventually accepted her presence, and she was also helpful in helping David Gilmour overcome his cocaine addiction. They moved on to the next phase of the project. They moved between Astoria and Olympic Studios to finish up the initial recording process. Then they went to Metropolis Studios and Creek Studios in London. Finally, the album was mastered at the Mastering Lab in Los Angeles. The band had so much unused material for the album. Most of this was ambient music, so they created this 1-hour-long composition and called it The Big Spliff. It was never released, but much of this was used for The Endless River. I mentioned before that this album deals with communication and talking to solve problems. There have been some interpretations with the songs. For example, the songs Poles Apart and Lost for Words have been interpreted to be about past tensions with Roger Waters. David Gilmour denied that it was true, though. If you're wondering what the Division Bell means, it refers to a bell that is rung in British Parliament to announce a vote. It can also be interpreted as a metaphor for making choices. There are also a few political songs on the album. For example, the song Great Day for Freedom talks about the fall of the Berlin Wall and ethnic cleansing in Yugoslavia. There are also some guest vocals by Stephen Hawking on the track Keep Talking, which was interesting because the voice recording was actually used for a British television commercial. The album art is also very iconic. It was created by Storm Thorgerson, who had been a long-time collaborator with the band. The 2 large metal heads are actually sculptures that were placed in a field. They were put together to represent 2 faces talking, but you can also look at it as a third face. According to Storm Thorgerson, the third face is supposed to represent Syd Barrett. These sculptures were in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio, back in 2001, and then they were moved to London Victoria and Albert Museum, although I'm not sure where they are currently. They launched a tour 2 days after the album's release. I saw this show back at Yankee Stadium in New York City. It was a great show. I remember they had a lot of laser lights and the floating pig. They played songs that spanned their entire career, from Astronomy Domini, from Pipers at the Gates of Dawn, to their current material. They toured through the US, Canada, and Europe, Supposedly Roger Waters was invited to join, but he declined. They eventually released a live album and VHS called Pulse. The opening track is called Cluster One, which is an instrumental written by David Gilmour and Richard Wright. This is their first collaboration since Mudmen from Obscured by Clouds. The song has never been performed live. I like it. It's a good opening track. It's very like ambient. It's kind of takes a while to take off, but I really like it. What Do You Want From Me is also written by Gilmour and Wright, and the lyrics were written by Polly Samson. They released a live version of the song from the Pulse album in Canada. According to David Gilmour, this was a Chicago blues tune. Another one I like a lot. I really like the guitar playing on this one. Pulls Apart was meant to be for Syd Barrett in the first verse and Roger Waters in the second verse. They even begin the second verse with the words Hey You, which is a reference to the song From the Wall. The song also uses a very unique guitar tuning. Really good song. I like this one a lot. Marooned is an instrumental. The song is the only Pink Floyd song to win a Grammy. It's also labeled as a space rock or psychedelic rock song. They only played this song live 3 times. I think it's a great instrumental. I think it's very reminiscent of the sound from the early days. They also recorded a music video for the song in 2014 for the 20th anniversary of the Great album. Day for Freedom was a song that I mentioned before. The original title was called In Shades of Grey, and it was about how people felt optimistic after the Berlin Wall came down. Things did not work out how everyone expected. Some people interpreted the song about being about how Roger Waters left the band, but David Gilmour denied this. The song was played live during the Division Bell tour, and the live version is available on Pulse. David Gilmour has also played it as a solo artist. Wearing the Inside Out is the only song where David Gilmour does not receive a writing credit. This was written by Richard Wright and Anthony Moore. Also the first time Richard Wright did lead vocals since Dark Side of the Moon. The song was never performed live with Pink Floyd, but David Gilmour has played it on his on an island tour. Take It Back was the first single from the album and their first single in 7 years. This was also their 4th highest charting single in the UK. The song uses an E-bow played on an acoustic guitar. This was how David Gilmour got that unique sound. Coming Back to Life was the only track where David Gilmour is the sole songwriter. The song was written about his wife, Polly Samson. Talking is a song that has a soundbite from Stephen Hawkins. This was also released as a single and their first single to be released in the United States. The song uses the talk box effect on the guitars, and the song is about how talking can solve problems. Lost for Words is a song about forgiveness written by both David and his wife. The song has also been interpreted to be about Roger Waters. The song was released as a single in Canada. High Hopes is the last song. This was also the second single, and they released a music video for the song. The song has been covered many times. The band Nightwish has a great version of this. So I think this is one of their best albums. This is a very laid back and relaxing type of album. I know Pink Floyd have never been considered hard rock or anything, but I think this one has a different type of vibe. I like it just has a very relaxing feel. It's very different from something like The Wall, which had more hard rock elements. This is an album to chill out to. So let me know in the comments what you think of this album. Check out my review of A Momentary Lapse of Reason that I reviewed for the 35th anniversary. I'll stick that right there. Please like this video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you in the next one.